I started up so early. I was very, very short-sighted, maybe. That time there was no VC.
Yeah.
You basically
Yeah.
put your own money, scared by the skin of my teeth. And that to me was like saying, I said, boss, abhi main seekh gaya, life mein. The whole edtech globally was getting disrupted.
Yeah.
And they knew it was getting disrupted. And so what happens when top management hold on to their chairs even more tightly than they used to normally.
Yeah.
And so they end up doing the wrong things most of the time. When somebody buys a home today, they typically get stuck with unorganized market. The experience is bad. Accel didn't fund HomeLane initially.
Okay.
I think Accel's check was for an edtech. In 2015, we scaled the business so much that we were super confident of getting to about 6 to 8 crore a month revenues. And I kept count. I met 149 investors. I got 148 moves. After doing so much of Dhanda and entrepreneurship, you think you know everything about everything, but it's not true. Good times never teach you anything. They actually teach you to make more mistakes.
What advice would you have for the 1x investor like myself, from a 4x entrepreneur? Good morning, Srikanth. Thank you so much for joining us on That One Idea. This one is a special first because I have a super senior from school joining us today. So thank you so much, and shout out to Purna Pragya Sadashiv Nagar.
The
great PPEC. So with that, a warm Namaskara, because it's very rare. Last season we had CK of Wakefit,
right.
But we always try to, I would say, almost hunt down, because it's an endangered species of Bangalore entrepreneurs, I would say. So welcome an original Bangalorean to the show. Would love to understand what Bangalore was like before the startup boom. Was it pensioners' paradise? Was it an IT services led boom? But take us through what was Bangalore growing up for you, and what were your entrepreneurial influences?
Namaskara, first of all. For me, actually, Bangalore has obviously changed significantly. The biggest thing that pops out to me is just the distances. Like, for example, where we are sitting here, which is on Old Airport Road, used to be like back of the beyond. And now it's like bang in the middle
Core
of town.
The city.
I used to come this side. I used to stay in one of the old parts of Bangalore, which was Kumara Park, like I was mentioning. So, to come this side would be like maybe once in 6 months kind of an experience, and now it's like pretty much you need to do that. So I think distance is the first thing that comes to mind. It used to be clearly far more green, far less metal and cement. So sad, but used to be. But I'm happy to say that I think we still not lost it all. I think even some parts still, the Jayanagars, the Malleshwaram still have that piece left, which is good. But used to be just absolutely beautiful. For me, the memories are cycling to school. I used to play table tennis, so cycling to table tennis, to play table tennis in the morning or in the evening or both. Not too much traffic. Playing cricket on the road, which is unthinkable now. We'll probably get run over twice over. So those are the early Bangalore memories.
And just in terms of entrepreneurship, right? Of course, the IT services boom was evident and a big influence on everyone who grew up in Bangalore. Any personal anecdotes from that journey, and even family-wise, was entrepreneurship even a viable path discussed at the dining table?
Actually, my dad was a first generation entrepreneur. He worked for ICI Paints, the paint company, for many years as a salesperson. And I think then they moved into some other city he didn't want to go to. And then he decided that he will settle in Bangalore the year I was born, which is 1970. So I had seen him. He was a very different kind of entrepreneur, though. Definitely a lot of influence on me, on my thinking also. But I would say there were some things that I really agreed with what he did. And there were things that I said, let's agree to disagree. So one of the things was, for example, he was very content as an entrepreneur. So his logic was, just to give you an anecdote, my elder son was his first grandchild, even though I'm the younger one in the family, and two of us. And he used to love to play with Siddharth, my older son. And I have heard him sometimes talk to customers and say, hey, you know what? I am like super busy the next 2 days. I am going out of town and I won't be able to service your requirement till Monday or whatever.
Yeah.
And he will actually go and watch the test match with my son
Yeah.
at the KSCA or even go to Chennai and watch. So I used to ask him, Hari, Appa, why are you doing this?
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, one big statistic which stood out for me. In 1970, he started the business. He had about 5 customers.
Yeah.
In 2000, he shut the business.
Yeah.
He had about 6 customers, and 4 of them were common between 1970 and 2000. So I asked him, why didn't you build this to 500 customers, 5,000 customers? His logic was simple. He said, you know what? I want to spend more time on my own, doing my stuff that I like, spending time with my grandkids, etc., etc. I used to earn 10,000 rupees a month at ICI. Now I earn 20,000. That's 2x of what I used to do. That's enough for me. I don't want to compromise too much. So I found it perplexing a bit. I still probably don't agree with it too much, but I see his logic. I mean, it's not about right or wrong. It's just about choosing the path that you want and which is right for you. And I mean, he was, God bless him, but he was as content as anybody else I've seen in my life. So can't argue against that. So that was a big influence. So maybe that influenced me in starting up a little bit. I was also, as all of us are, I started up so early. I was very, very short-sighted, maybe. I joined Wipro for all of 90 days and I quit. And my only logic was I was earning 4,500 rupees salary there, and I found a vocation which could probably give me 2x or 3x of that quite easily. I thought it was quite easy. Turned out not to be so easy, but initially I thought it was. And I quit. And I didn't have the best boss in the world. So that helped me quit a little earlier, maybe. I just quit and started.
So fair to say you describe yourself and you are a 4x entrepreneur, and your first stint, as we just heard, was 90 days, like a disastrous 90 days at Wipro. Fair to say you were an accidental first entrepreneur. But take us to the early days of assembling PCs imported from China or Taiwan, assembling them, getting a quick buck for every PC you assembled, and then segue into Edurite. We all remember the days when a CD-ROM was stuck at the back of our textbooks and our entrance exam books. But take us through how you went from assembling PCs to actually starting an educational business, a content business.
Sure. So assembling PCs, like you said, like rightly, was a little more accidental. But then I stumbled upon it and I kind of liked it, and I started running this business. It was called Total Solutions. Ran it from home first, and then I got a small office in Malleshwaram, actually right opposite the Sai Baba temple on Sampike Road. And so I had about a dozen people maybe, and at peak. So not very large, not too small. Was earning money reasonably well.
Much more than your Wipro.
Much more than my Wipro, for sure. But what I started realizing, but I must pause there. The lessons that I learned during that stint was amazing, because at that time there was no VC. You basically put your own money. I can't remember exactly now, but I don't think I borrowed too much from my father also. I was, clear that I wanted to strike out on my own and try and do something. Not that my father could give me too much. We have typical middle class family, so it's not like we had too much of resources. And just started out. But some of the learning, so I used to import stuff from other countries, some components. At that time, memory used to be in chips. You pretty much on the motherboard used to actually press it in and stick the chips in. Still remember one anecdote, probably talk about it, because this learning never left me. Even now, so I had at one point in time gone to a conference in Singapore, and I had met somebody there who seemed to have a great deal on memory chips, or so I thought. And he said, you know what, this is the last lot, and the ship is sailing in like a week. If you want, I can send it to you, and this is going to be like, you can easily make like 50% more immediately, lot of demand, etc., etc., etc. All seemed true, generally checked out, called one or two people, and then they said, lagta hai, there will be interest, etc. So kind of greed got the better of me. I ordered the whole lot. It was a lot of money for me then. It was about somewhere between 10 and 15 lakhs, I remember. So it was really a lot of money. Um, and then I came here, got the shipment. The shipment got stuck for whatever reason. That time red tape is a little more than it is now. So got stuck and I had to pay a little bit more to get it out than I had imagined. So my cost became a little higher than I had thought. And it also, more importantly, took longer for me to clear it. So by then, technology not was changing.
Yeah.
And people will know. I mean, people on the street will know, acha, ye to, matlab, this is not going to be selling 6 months from now or 3 months from now. So I called like the biggest dealers in Bangalore and I started asking them, do you need this chip? Do you need this chip? Not one of them wanted. I said, man, ye to,
Okay.
yeah. I mean, I'm done for. And that was pretty much going to probably take me down. So I had this one supplier, Mr. Singhania, who was still a good friend of mine. Mostly all my suppliers used to come from him, except for this one where I had kind of ventured out, so to speak. So I told him, I said, sir, ऐसा हो गया. He said, यार तू गलत कर रहा है, तू रिवर्स कर रहा है. तो एक काम कर, तू मेरे को डिटेल्स दे. And at that time, no mobile phones, just landlines. So he said, give me 2-3 days. So what he did was, because he could not call from his phone, people will recognize his number. He basically went around to 5-10 other offices, called the same 10 guys whom I had called, and told all of them that he doesn't want to sell, but he wants to buy. And he created an artificial, basically, demand for me. And he asked for volumes which were like stupendous.
Yeah.
I mean, which was like 10x the volume that I had.
So everyone assumed it's the next big thing.
And they thought, okay, I can make a quick buck.
Yeah.
And by the way, 1 week back, this guy had called me kind of thing. So I got like 2-3 calls back from these guys. And I'm actually managed, I didn't make a single rupee, but I didn't lose a single rupee. I mean, I kind of escaped by the skin of my teeth. And that to me was like saying, I said, boss, abhi main seekh gaya, life mein, I should know. I used to deal directly with consumers, so the margins were much higher. I used to make like 3,000-4,000 rupees a PC. It was about 10% margin, right? About 30,000-40,000 was at that time desktops, no laptops. So I said, I should stick to my strengths and know where to not go, basically. But that that lesson stood out, saying, sometimes thinking counterintuitively, kind of helps. So that is one episode which stands out for me. But otherwise, I ran a business. I did all the stuff which you would probably imagine in the 90s, right? I ran an internet cafe in my office. It was called Netopia. I was very proud of it. I thought of the name myself. I was really proud of it.
Was Sifi around? Were the Sifi cafes?
Not yet. Not yet. So
you were the
I
original,
was, So I was one of the ahead of the curve. And that time there used to be this proxy firewall which used to, basically you can get internet through a modem on one and then you could distribute it to few computers, and that software was like a big revelation for us. So I managed to get that and run this cafe also while I sold PCs. Anyways, so
you've done door-to-door sales as well.
Done a lot of door-to-door sales. I used to pretty much sell into corporates, small corporates. Gokuldas Exports was a customer, PES was a customer, people like that. Some small software companies like Veda Automation used to be there. Got acquired by Tally eventually, but they were all my customers. So a lot of door-to-door sales. Pretty much I was the only sales guy in the company. And also, move to service. So what happened was between 93 when I started up to 2000 when I decided that this was not going the right way. About 98 or so, I started seeing that the cost of the PC remained at 30-40K, but the margin reduced from 3 to 5,000 to about 500 rupees. And so the risk became very high. And the whole world used to run on credit at that time. So Mr. Singhania was bankrolling me pretty much. I owed him at some point in time 1.5 crore rupees. And I needed to get from the customers similar or more from them. So, it's like literally you're in a Chakravyuh, right? You can't get out because, then you have to stop the wheel And how do you stop the wheel? Because then you have to pay and stop the wheel, and you don't have the money to pay, so you just keep running. So I did that, but I realized that this was getting a little too risky. About 98 onwards, I stopped selling very much and moved a little more to maintenance, service contracts, etc., which didn't involve too much of capex, inventory capex, etc., or working capital, and only on services. So I had some large contracts for that and moved to that. And then in 2000, coming to the Edurite, beginning of Edurite. So this friend of mine who ran PES as a college then, now it's a university, had this idea saying, hey, you know what? Only the top 0.5% or 1% go to great schools and colleges. Can we use technology to bridge that gap? Can we take the best teacher to the last student? Name online, that was the thought. He called me, very, very good friend, like almost like my mentor. So he called me, he said, hey, I want to do this. I'll only do this if you come in and start with me. I said, yeah, sure. I still remember the date, 26 Jan 2000. Yeah, it was a holiday. He said, we have a pitch to a NRI who's a big shot in the valley, and we are asking him for investment of 4 crores. I said, wow, okay. I said, I'll come. So helped him with the deck, went there, and we were meeting Mr. B.V. Jagdish, who was the co-founder of Exodus at that time. Exodus was the largest hosting provider in the world, pretty much in US at least. So met him, very, very, fantastic gentleman. Still know him well. He listened to us and he said, hey, sounds like a good idea. Well, let's do this. So that's the last thing we were expecting. Then we didn't know what to do.
Now I really have to do this.
And so I started kind of unwinding from Total Solutions and, kind of started doing this. Jawar, of course, knew. Jawar is my friend who had the idea for Edurite. So he knew that I had to let go of this, and it took about 3-6 months and kind of over. So that started my edtech journey. Again, if I may say so, even accidental once again.
But again ahead of the curve.
Again, very much ahead of the curve. I like 10 years ahead. And so started that, and 14 years stuck with that business, 2 acquisitions, lots of learning. I mean, that 14 years literally, I can say, made me grow up as an entrepreneur, pretty much. Learned a lot of things firsthand. I think today I saw it somewhere, right? On DeepSeek, scarcity teaches you a lot. So I think that taught me a lot. So we had raised about 7 crores of funding initially in 2000, along with Mr. Jagdish and all that. We promptly spent everything, just like most people, I guess, startups do. So in 2 years, we ran out of money. We didn't have a very credible idea of how we were going to make money, and we didn't have a very credible idea of growth. So basically, we didn't have anything. But then, we still had a lot of the content that we had built. I was very sure that I was not going to give up. So long story short, we rejigged a bit, we did a reorg and all that, and they said, okay, you run this business from now on. And I started running it from about 2002 on my own. From there,
so you went from a solopreneur so far to now having to build orgs and teams around you and really scale up orgs as the company and business scale, right? And you went through 2 full acquisitions. Any learnings from that journey of scaling up? And it was still, I know you were VC backed and you mentioned funding, but it was still frugal and compared to at least the times we are currently in.
No, very much. Very much. In fact, in the Edurite times, like after we had raised some money in the initial stages and we grew the business, obviously, right? I mean, when you don't grow for too long or when you kind of plateau, you're not seeing too much of improvement happening. And for that improvement to happen, you also need, so it's the chicken and egg kind of a situation, right? Which comes first. And I was not able to raise money. I had not raised money till then. I mean, typically, even that first one which we had raised was by accident. I mean, pretty much a solo pitch, and somebody we knew, and he said, yeah, and why not, and kind of. So they're not professional in that sense in terms of fundraise, etc. But learned the concept. Even for me then, or even for my other co-founders at Edurite, the concept of VC money being there for the risk was a little bit still fuzzy, right? I mean, it's like, if you have taken money from them, you have to give it back to them kind of a thing. But that was obviously not the case. But then we felt that was the case. And so it was like really old. So did that and then realized that I was stuck in again a world, which is that I needed capital to kind of grow. I was not getting that. They were all very supportive, mind you. So in fact, at some point in time, and I used to think this to myself, I've never spoken about it much, or I've not told anybody. Started feeling like somebody who's working in the circus. Every 3 months, the board comes along and you show them some new trick, and then they all clap, and then they all go away, right? And then 3 months again they come, then I show one more trick,
Another story you're selling.
Another story. But that's about it. So I said, this is not happening. But then, thankfully, again, scarcity, I needed to really innovate on the go-to-market model. I had no choice. Otherwise, we had to just shut down. I mean, pretty much. Because the core assumption that learners and parents of learners will actually pay top dollar to access e-learning content in the early 2000s was a non-starter.
That was flawed.
That was really we were 10, 15 years too early. No streaming, no phone, no video, nothing, right? I mean, so CD-ROM, like you said. So, but then so I had to really innovate. So really innovated on GTM, thought of different ways of taking the content. My clear thing was, okay, now the student is not interested, that's clear. Now he's not anyway not paying. So the parent is paying. Can I get to a distribution mechanism where I can distribute it en masse? And I don't even have to pay for it. In fact, reverse, I get paid for it. And I make maybe smaller margins per piece, but I sell millions. And that worked. So starting with PCs and then went to textbooks and then went to FMCG. And that really, really worked for us. Won't go too much into that because that's a half an hour by itself. But yeah, so that really got us through those 4-5 years. We were doing about 5 crores when TutorVista acquired us in 2007. We were profitable by 1 crore. So we were like 20% EBIT, which seems like a lot today.
It's still a lot.
So, but it was not bad at all. And so we were in a place where we were at least not dependent on external capital. And that's really when you don't want to get acquired is when you really get offers to get acquired. When Ganesh and Srini and Meena and all came around with TutorVista idea, they first became my customers. So they started licensing e-learning content from me for the US market. And then about a year later, Ganesh came and said, hey, we want to start India. Do you want to come? I said, see, I've got too much blood, sweat and tears with Edurite. It'll only happen if you want to look at an acquisition, otherwise it's not going to happen. Again, long story short, they acquired us and I also moved on. I did, obviously, that was again a big gamble in my mind because from running it pretty much on my own for like 5 years, nobody asked me, to now, And clearly, obviously, I was not the leader of the pack. But that was fine. So coming back to the acquisitions that you were asking me about. So I do think that as long as there is transparency, I do believe that transparency is undervalued in anything that we do. I think especially when you are dealing with anybody who can be either an equal or can be up or down, I think that that initial bit of extra dose of transparency actually sets the foundation for a much, much longer, stronger business or personal relationship for many years to come. It's happened with Ganesh, Meena for me. I mean, I still, very good friends, and it's now what 20 years since they became my customers at Edurite, etc. But I do think that is discounted, or I don't know. Sometimes maybe greed gets the better of either party or whatever. But yeah, I do think that's very
take
important.
that all the way through TutorVista, then subsequently got acquired by Pearson. And if I may say, you had your second corporate stint, which was longer than 90 days, close to 2 years as the India head of Pearson. Any changes in terms of, how were you in a corporate setup again? And what, I don't know if you changed any of the culture, etc. But how did those 2 years feel, stifling for you?
Very.
Okay.
So I was really bad.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not even being funny here. I genuinely was very bad. So it's simple, right? You're used to doing your own thing to some extent. You know what are the lines beyond which you won't take a risk, but you do take risks. You don't have to ask 10 people before you take a risk. From there to an environment where you pretty much need to ask people what you need to do, like day after tomorrow. And also host a lot of people generally, a lot also, of stakeholder management. A lot of stakeholder management, etc. So if you want a decision to be this one, you need to really work like. Otherwise, it was just getting into a meeting and telling them why I think it's a good idea, and hopefully everybody agrees. And then sometimes they're not agreed also. But I'm saying from that to this, to me, that was problem number one. Second problem was Pearson is and was an elephant. And elephants can't dance, right? I mean, so they move slowly, much more slowly than compared to a startup. And the whole edtech globally was getting disrupted. And they knew it was getting disrupted. And so what happens when that happens is top management hold on to their chairs even more tightly than they used to normally. And so they end up doing the wrong things most of the time. So all of those things were playing out. Of course, I have no this one in saying so. They probably also overpaid for any asset that they bought, including a TutorVista / Edurite. So they had to also substantiate why they paid so much. So that was also an issue. So all in all, it was like bad. And I kind of didn't enjoy it at all. In fact, I was actually, technically speaking, 2011, they acquired us. Jan 2013, they acquired 100%. So 11 was 80%, 13 was 100%. The balance 20% was acquired. So till 2013 Jan, I was a shareholder. So I had some stake and I had a lock-in. 2013, everything went away. Technically, I could have walked away. I chose not to, and I took up the head of, Pearson role for about 1 year. So till beginning of 2014, and which is when I said, hey. Actually, you know what happened? One day I got up and I said, oh God, I have to go to office today. And then I said, realized, that is it. That was the last. That day I said, no, I'm done. The Wipro nightmares came back. Maybe. So what I realized was that the decision taken 20 years earlier was not so bad after all. It must be very reassuring. So as a person at the core, you felt the same. And we were discussing earlier that now coming into the HomeLane journey now, that it was probably in your 4 entrepreneurial stints, probably the most intentional. You also had a little bit of a break between Pearson and HomeLane, although a small, short one. But you went through this journey of being EIR at Accel and working closely with Anand. But take us through the backstory to starting up. Maybe it was at the Accel office itself, but what was that backstory, and why were you a wiser, more intentional entrepreneur with HomeLane? Sure. So when I left, I had done 14 years in EdTech. I had 2 paths to choose. I thought I had gained a lot of wisdom in running EdTech businesses. So I either milk that some more and start another in EdTech. And Anand at Accel was keen that if I was, then he wanted to also be part of that journey. And we had kind of agreed saying, I will do a business plan sitting at the Accel office and then see if that works. So started working on something there. I was not fully convinced though. I had developed edtech fatigue, as I call it.
Yeah.
I mean, I had like gone through a lot of
Yeah.
ups and downs, mostly downs.
Yeah.
And I was not very sure whether I was up for one more stint. And I know if you want to build anything valuable, it does take time.
Yes.
It takes 5 years, 10 years for you to
Yeah.
really.
Yeah.
So I said, I'm not sure whether I want to sign up for one more in the same domain. And so the other route was to do something completely what I was not comfortable
Yeah.
with. And that became more and more attractive with every passing day. I said, हाँ यार ठीक है यार edtech ही किया है तो ये कर लेंगे kind of thing. So yeah, did spend some time at Accel. Wrote a small, very version 0 of a business plan. But I was not very sure still, but still started doing some primary research, and that's when again Ganesh, Rama was my co-founder in the initial days. So we all came up with this postulate that, when somebody buys a home today, they typically get stuck with unorganized market.
Yeah.
The experience is bad. Is there a large brand? So I did some primary research. Because I used to run schools as part of my edtech business, I used to run 40 schools. So I knew quite a few builders because a lot of builders own schools and colleges.
Yeah.
So I knew Mr. Mantri, Mr. Shetty. I knew Dhruv from Prop Tiger. I actually reached out to all of them. I asked for one-on-one meetings. I actually met them face to face, and I asked them, "Hey, this is my idea. If I go with a proposition to a customer of giving them a semi-furnished apartment, which is just kitchens and wardrobes done up, is that worth it? Can I build a brand? Is it a global proposition, only India proposition? What do you think? How large can this be potentially, etc., etc.? First of all, is this a pain? So one, everybody agreed it was a pain point.
Yeah.
Two, they said it's a difficult problem to solve because operationally the last mile is the most vulnerable, and that's where everything breaks down. So I don't see how you're going to solve it. But yes, the problem exists. So that seemed to be validated. And then I said, okay, why not dive in? And you never know unless you're really trying to solve it.
Yeah.
So yeah, here we are, 10 years now. We've delivered about 45,000 homes. We're delivering about 1,000 homes a month. And yeah, it's been very interesting. Lots of ups and downs again.
Yeah.
I
want to actually touch upon, you mentioned about Accel backing you at the very start, and that's a no-brainer for an entrepreneur of your pedigree and just tenure, I would say. But take us to some of the not so obvious parts through fundraising. The space you were in was not, I would say, without competition. You did have a fair bit of competition to deal with. And it was a tough space. Like you said, there are a lot of non-obvious, highly, it's unorganized, very, very fragmented. Home buying is a very emotional, a lot of emotions involved with home buying as well. So when we talk about customer success and NPS, a lot of emotions at play. It's not just another product you're delivering. It's a one-time high-ticket purchase, a once-in-a-lifetime decision for most of your customers. But what were the not so obvious parts after that first round for you?
Oh, by the way, Accel didn't fund HomeLane initially.
Okay.
I think Accel's check was for an edtech.
Oh, and this.
So I actually walked away from the check.
Okay. Yeah.
So just to clarify.
All right.
But Accel came in, now they're shareholders.
Yes.
Because we did a backdoor entry. They already had an investment in this space which was competing, and so they said they will not participate, rightly so.
Yeah.
So the check of 5 million was actually only if I was going to do an edtech.
Got it.
And I decided not to.
Yeah.
So whatever. So that
stuck to his word.
Yes.
Yeah.
So they already had an investment in a company called Zansar. I don't know if you remember that time. It was one of the e-commerce players, and they then kind of morphed into something called Capri Coast. Yeah. And we kind of acquired Capri Coast in 2017, about 4 years after we started.
Yeah.
We acquired them, and that's when Accel came in. So just to clarify, our first check came actually from Ranjan, from Aaron, and Ranjan and Mohandas, and from Sequoia. At that time, Sequoia, now Peak 15. GB was an investor in Edurite and TutorVista. And he kind of came in, and so actually so was Ranjan. So both of them were like second time investors.
Yeah.
So it was easier this time around because I had some pedigree, I had some backing, I had some exit to speak of. in my
But
earlier.
my question is beyond that first check,
Yeah.
and like you said, it was easier. Nothing's ever
No.
easy, I would say. But I'm sure there were a lot of, like, beyond that first check, there were a lot of things that were not so obvious with regard to fundraising.
No, absolutely. I can give you one instance. In 2015, we scaled the business so much that we were super confident of getting to about 6 to 8 crore a month revenues. It was visible. And we were getting in order. So we said, now we just have to execute them. So it's like easy peasy. So why not? So I went out to the market and I wanted to raise 50 million. I was also very clear that I would be able to raise it at 100 million because we were doing, I met and I kept count. I met 149 investors. I got 148 moves. I started to raise 50. Ended up raising 2 million from an external investor. My internal investors were very supportive. They had done 2 bridges, not one, of 3 million and 3 million each. And so they'd already given me 6 million. By the time I raised the round, it took me a year and meeting 150 people to meet itself physically. It will take you that much time. But that period was the most humbling, difficult, but also learned a lot. I mean, during that time, I learned what not to do, learned how to change the model. The model was basically wrong. The foundation was wrong, what we had started with. So, a lot of you, unless you're humble, you're not even going to see it. Forget change. So a lot of, swallowing ego, you obviously after doing so much of dhanda and entrepreneurship, you think you know everything about everything, but it's not true. I mean, make silly mistakes at any point in time. So accepting it, turning back, changing the model, starting literally from scratch, etc., etc. For whatever reasons, my co-founder also decided that time that he wanted out. So that handling all of that. So those years were very again transformative for HomeLane and for me. But we came out stronger. Did finally do a 50 million round, but during COVID. It took some time, and it is some of the things that I mean, I'm sure most founders know, but I'll just say it because I think sometimes we forget. It's the easiest to raise money when you don't need the money. It should be obvious that you don't need the money. You can't keep saying, I don't need the money when you actually need the money and then say, no. Investors are smart. So they know when you need the money and when you don't. So be clear on when you definitely want to raise. If you're raising when you don't need the money, please ensure that you're raising at the right terms. Because then you really don't need the money. Then you must be saying, hey, you know what, my way or highway, right? Please do that. That's what I would advise to entrepreneurs. What we tend to do is we tend to push it to the last 6 months or 1 year and say, abhi to ho jayega. And then you start sweating, right? And it happens to the best of us. I definitely think that that's one piece of advice that any round, it doesn't change the same thing. And I also think typically we underestimate how much resources we need. We always tend to say we need X when we actually need 2 or 3X. And we tend to say, okay, I am frugal by nature, which most of us are, I'm sure, right? And I don't think I'm going to spend that much, but we do end up spending that much time. And it does take time because you are trying to disrupt something. That's why you are doing what you're doing. And that takes time, effort, money, more than what you normally calculate and do. So I think that's the other thing that I would say. Always try and aim for, say, 2X of what you think you need, at least, if not 3X.
I also want to touch upon, you've spoken previously about how in any startup's journey, there'll be multiple near-death experiences. And you spoke about the ability to keep your ego aside, be humble, and relook at the business on a first principles basis, right? But take us through the pivots and these near-death experiences. You're often spoken about like this relentless, not just optimism, but perseverance as well, right? But how do founders, and today people would say that we are in a funding winter of sorts, but how does one actually look at this not so obvious and almost reset when not just capital, but also, on the consumption side, we're seeing some bit of a consumer slowdown as well.
To me, I've always said success, at least in startups, is a lot about refusing to die many times. You may not be successful, but the fact that you're alive, you're persevering, and you are looking for to turn the corner itself is success to some degree. And people don't realize that. People say, "Arey yaar, I'm in the same place. I'm on a treadmill for the last 2 years." Boss, at least you are running. You're walking or you're doing something. It is definitely worth it because at some point in time, when the markets change for the better, you are. So to me, I think perseverance is again very underestimated as one of the, I feel it is the number one, number two, and number three quality that you need to have as an entrepreneur. Because mostly none of us will ever get it right the first time. In fact, if you get it right the first time, there's something wrong with you. Right? So you would have to keep innovating. You would have to keep persevering. You will fail. You will fall flat on your face. It is a question of how many times you get up. Are you getting up one more time than you fall? That's all that matters. So I think that's a big one. For us, it happened, I think I told you already, 2015, 2016 was extremely difficult. Do think that, but those times teaches you far more than good times ever will. I think good times never teach you anything. They actually teach you to make more mistakes. So I do think that that's important. Going forward to your question on, now that there is, a little bit of a funding winter and even markets are softening, I do think, I definitely think that growth should go as number two priority. You need to grow. There's no choice. But you don't need to grow at 100, 200% year on year. I think even if you are anywhere between a 20 and a 50%, depending on what stage your business is, everybody's going to be happy. But you need to definitely cut on that burn. I think that is one thing that we all have learned the hard way, I guess, in the last couple of years. But yeah, that is one thing that today nobody's going to fund. I mean, pretty much nobody's going to fund unless you're a Zepto.
I want to just change segues into, as I'm listening to the story, it's evident that you've been through possibly every permutation combination of an investor / acquirer, right? You've raised from angels, from homegrown VCs, global VC franchises. You've done like a domestic acquisition, a cross-border, like again, a large number one global MNC style acquisition. Switching gears, and what advice would you have for the 1x investor like myself, from a 4x entrepreneur? You've managed several boards, several cap tables, complex inter-se shareholder dynamics, I would say. But for someone, I think I'll split into two parts. One is founder value add. Is it like overrated, underrated? Is no value add better? And just what's the best way in which we can manage these multiple complex, I would say, board and cap table stakeholders? Yeah.
Sure. So let me talk about maybe on the investor side first and what I would advise to an investor. See, you've taken a bet on the entrepreneur because of who he or she is. Because of their ability to take risk, because of their ability, period.
Yes.
I don't think after taking the bet, you should second guess on their ability. I think that's the main thing that I would say. But having said that, so where I would differentiate is between the strategic piece and the tactical piece. I've seen a lot of investors dip their hand into the tactical piece. Acha, अरे यार इसके साथ tie up कर लो, आप make this guy a vendor, or go and sell to this, B2B is the way to go, and our SaaS is not selling because of ABC. अरे छोड़ दो. I mean, I don't think that's really what the entrepreneur needs. But I think where investors are not spending too much time, and they should, is on the strategic piece, which is that, what, let's look it up. Let's look out 5 years from now and see where we want to go. Broadly, are we going in that direction? Or is there some U-turn that's happened? Why has it happened? A. B, are the foundations okay? I'm again saying a lot of investors, I'm sorry to say, turn a blind eye to their own entrepreneurs becoming super hot angels. I do not agree with the logic at all. They have raised money. I have raised 1,000 crores at HomeLane.
Yeah.
It is my fiduciary responsibility to ensure that my investors actually first get a good exit,
Yeah.
whatever good may be.
Yeah.
It may differ from investor to investor. But
there's
I
an
need to
obligation
make
return,
sure,
yeah.
no, I need to make sure I'm trying my best.
Yeah.
It can or may not happen. I may fail very much. No problem. But I can't be doing 10 other things, and I'm sorry, when my business is not doing so well. I feel that is an area. So I would say, please look at the basics. I mean, is your guy fully signed on? Is he spending all the time? Is he fighting tooth and nail for his one? Is he pivoting if things are not working? And in early stage, they don't work more often than things do.
Yeah.
So is all that okay? Is the is the founder chemistry okay? Is between the managing team, etc. Those are the ones that you really want to focus on, and not the tactical ones. I feel a lot of time is spent more on like coaching on a day-to-day, like whatever, soccer mom, rather than on seeing if the foundationally, because you need to build 100 floors, you're still on floor 3. If the foundation is not strong, it's not going to get built. I mean, very clear. So that is what I would focus on, because your journey with him or her is at least 5 years, 7 years, 10 years. And that's not going to work if, I really strongly feel sometimes today the investors are pushing them in the wrong direction. I can't understand these things about scouts being encouraged. I just feel it's against, sorry to say, completely against. I mean, doesn't work for me.
About founder value add from
Yeah.
the investor side. Yeah.
I think there's a lot of value add. There are different types of founders though.
Yeah.
I have had tremendous amount of value add from my investors over the years. I mean, I can't tell you. But again, I think that large dose of humility in the founder is a pre-essential for you to actually be receptive to feedback. You can't say, "Arey yaar, inko kya malum hai? Ye to matlab, I also think the founder, I feel, most of the time has the ability to kind of seek good and not so good advice. And you should leave it to the
Yeah.
founder. I don't think giving advice is wrong. I think insisting that you use the advice is wrong. But I do think advice should be given, because many times what happens is even seasoned founders or not so seasoned also, obviously, we do tend to make rookie mistakes. I mean, that's the truth. And nothing wrong if somebody points it out. I don't think so. Again, I'll go back to that. I think transparency is the root.
Yeah.
The more you know, the more you can give proper advice. And the more I tell you, right, as an investor, easier actually it becomes, because then I can offload all my troubles and say, "Arey yaar, ye ho raha hai, wo ho raha hai," kind of thing. But if I'm an entrepreneur who likes to keep some things back and who doesn't feel I want to share everything, that I think that's the source of the problem. So I would put the onus more on the entrepreneur on this one. I do think that they need to put the front foot forward, be transparent, seek advice, irrespective, especially in the initial days. I do think I 100% know every single time I have sought advice, I've definitely got value. I have not taken all advice all the time.
Yeah.
Let me be also clear. But I've got value. I at least know what not to do. I at least know, okay, ye direction mein broadly jana hai. That kind of thing, which is all very useful. I mean, it's up to you and your...
And the same thing with managing and, I would say, firstly, assembling teams. And we spoke earlier about the dream team that you've assembled now with the Design Cafe acquisition, and Geeta and Shazan joining your leadership as well. But what's your hiring style and what's your management style? In many ways now, HomeLane is also having to build its own culture, and can I say corporate culture, so to speak. But what is your philosophy to org culture building, and any like hiring strategies, again, through like scaling from seed to scale?
Sure. So the way that I think we should be building differs on the stage of your company. I think the initial days, you need to be pretty much the brand ambassador of the values that you want to propose. I mean, or you want to promote in your org. You need to walk and talk. Like, for example, for us at HomeLane, we have 6 org principles. We take them super seriously. Customer centricity, trust and transparency, collaboration. We are in a projects business. If you don't collaborate, it's not going to. Trust and transparency extremely important for us. Empathy, very, very important, right? Sometimes you can, when you're, especially again, things are not going so well in a projects business, they can be a tutu meme very easily, right? So are you actually putting yourself in the other person's shoes? So initially, I would say you need to be the one who's actually showing, because you have like 10, 20, 50 people and they all are seeing you. Believe you me, they're seeing you all the time. So that's one. Today, for example, if I fast forward, we are 2,850 people. Very difficult for me alone just to show this. So not only you, but your entire leadership team needs to be completely signed on. And I think over communication, especially on things that are important, is the key. Again, you still continue to demonstrate. You still continue. For example, every single board meeting that we have, exactly a week later, we will have a town hall, even today, right? And almost 50% of what, obviously, there are some things we can't disclose to the employees, but they know where the company is going. They know what are the big. Yes, broadly what's going on. And this is like all 2850. They know. So they already feel a few things like that, right? And trust and transparency is 2 ways. Very difficult for you to do town halls with 3,000 people approximately, right? And answer all questions. But you know what we do? One, I got this magic trick some time back. We answer anonymous questions during our town halls. And we spent about an hour and a half on the town hall. We used to spend 75% of our time, like 8 years ago, on just giving updates and 25% on answering questions. It's flipped. Right? Because obviously, right, there are people who are 3 months old in the system. There are people who are 8 years old in the system, and they have very different questions. The designers have very different questions from sales guys, and so on and so forth. So, but one thing that I have seen work very well is put up every single question, unless it's personal. Why I have got 10% hike rather than 12% hike is not put up. But other than that, everything else is put up and answered. It helps a lot. At least it gives them that sense of being heard. And we tell them, can I help you? Sometimes I may not be able to. Can we ever have a 5-day week? We can't. We are a weekend business. We have to work 6 days. Unfortunate. But that's what it is. So you have to be honest, but you also need to over communicate. I do think the larger the company becomes, the more frequent your comms is, the more you reiterate on things like your org principles. And obviously, you are still living, walking, talking them. But you also need to do this in, YouTube videos, you send them comms. You need to do that. I mean, you have no choice. But that's the only way. I mean, I don't see any other way of... in terms of hiring, I check out if they are also bought into the broader org principles that we are trying to build in the company. So, for example, if you, for whatever reason, if the person does not feel as empathetic as you want somebody or your colleague to be, maybe some people may not be, but to me, it's an important indicator. They may have fantastic credentials, they may have all of it, but not there, then maybe not. In terms of skill, pretty much, I am of the firm belief that the team you need for 0 to 1 is most probably different from the team that you need for 1 to 10, is most probably different from the team that you need for 10 to 100. I believe that. And do you, as the founder and CEO, have the ability to discern between when you need the change, ability to empathetically communicate and make that change, and actually, because if you don't do that, then you are doing a disservice to your other shareholders. But do you have that ability to do it? And most importantly, do you have the humility to step out in case you yourself are blocking the path? Sometimes, why are you? You're not God,
Yeah.
right? I mean, you yourself may be the problem.
Yeah.
And it does happen. But for that, again, you need to have a lot of humility, first of all, for you to recognize it. And second of all, to say, okay, I'll stop doing these things from tomorrow. I'll give you an example. I do not run ops at HomeLane anymore because I realized that this is beyond the scale which I've also run before. Right? So I need people who are better and who can do this. And that's what I've tried to do. And that's the right thing to do, according to me. And it's difficult. It's not easy to step back. Yeah, you need to control strategy. You need to control fundraise. I still do, but you don't have to do everything. I mean, you cannot do everything all the time. So I think those are some of the ones. My style as a manager, I'm definitely not a micromanager. In fact, I'm on the other extreme.
Yeah.
I believe in broadly giving direction, being there as a friend, philosopher, guide every week or every fortnight or every month, depending on what they are comfortable with, and just checking in. Yes, obviously, if things are not going well, then you need to read out the right act, but that hopefully doesn't happen very often, right? So that's okay.
Awesome. And I want to obviously move to what you're most excited about for 2025. I know that IPO readiness is on the cards, and you've cited that that will be the ultimate goal, and more, I would say, power and praise to you to get there. But what are some of the other milestones that you're looking forward to hit this year?
The first one is in this quarter. We will be a bit profitable for the whole quarter,
Fantastic.
which is actually, I'm looking forward to it more than the IPO exponentially itself.
Yeah.
Because I do think if this doesn't happen, that's not going to happen anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, fingers crossed. We seem like we're going to hit that. So that's one big one that I'm looking forward to. I'm also looking forward to integrating Design Cafe far more strongly. It's already begun. But I think the next 9 months are going to be important to get synergies also out. So integration is one thing, is 1 + 1 should be greater than 2, at least to some extent. But we should also get some good people synergies out, make sure that everybody's happy working with each other, etc. That takes a little time. It's not like a switch where you turn it on or off. So that's also happening. So hopefully we will get over that. Looking forward to that happening. So far, so good. I do think that's the second thing. The third is obvious. IPO, I think, is going to be a milestone for anybody who starts a business. And I've never done anything close to it before. So for me, also, it's like hopefully the first time. Really looking forward to that, or anything else that can give my shareholders some value. So really, I'm not hung up. I'm excited about the potential IPO. But I think anything that adds to shareholder value is the way to go for at least for us.
Awesome. On that note, I wanted to say a huge thank you. Srikanth, it's been amazing. Thank you so much for coming early in the morning, at least by Bangalore startup standards, and sharing your backstory and your journey with us. Thank you once again, and all the very best as HomeLane grows from strength to strength. And I hope from 4X entrepreneur, you're 4X, I would say, IPO/listed entrepreneur. So all the very best, and thank you once
Thanks
again.
so much for having me, Anjali. Really nice.
Yes.
Enjoyed the chat. Good luck to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
All right.
Thank you.